Hello, and welcome. This is going to be a fun episode, guys. This is either episode 2 or episode 4 or episode 5 of the new season. Depends which angle I want to go down. I am not that far into post-production, but we are joined here today by Harry Saul Markham. Wow.
Salam alaikum.
Alaikum salam. This is your languages. Okay, we're gonna be throwing a lot of languages in
Languages,
today.
Yiddish, Hebrew, Arabic, Spanish, French, a whole mix.
German. Does German count as Yiddish in this?
Absolutely.
Okay, so Harry, we're gonna get straight into this. I want you to tell the world, the people listening, the millions that are listening right now, no stress at all, no pressure, who you are, what it is exactly that you do, and just a little bit about you, your upbringing, Brazil,
Okay. Firstly, thank you ever so much for having me on this.
I'm so happy to have you.
Incredibly important, I think, show, because you're reaching out to Jews not just in high places, but the ordinary Yid on the street. Yeah. And actually, I think, historians will look back on your work and think, no, I'm being serious, and look back on your work and say, well, actually, he did some really important research for us because he found out how ordinary Jews felt. And I know historians really find that kind of work to be important. So kudos
I like that
to
you're
you.
already thinking the history,
Well,
you're writing the history.
Winston Churchill once remarked, history will be very kind to me, for I intend to write it. And I believe in your case that's perfectly true. Anyway, so yes, I'm an Essex Jew, not particularly a practicing Jew. I'm very religious in that I have great faith and belief in my Yiddishkeit, as it were.
What does Yiddishkeit mean to you?
Yiddishkeit means to me, it's a term which encompasses a range of things: culture, history, identity, and religion too. And so I'm very connected to that, but I'm not religious. I was raised very identitarian. That is, I was given a strong sense of identity. Always reminded that I'm a Jew and you have a duty to marry him. And always aware of my past and my family's past, and told that I have a responsibility, an obligation to ensure that our people, to ensure that my parents have Jewish grandchildren. That's a fundamental responsibility, indeed, probably the only responsibility my parents have entrusted me with.
Is that stressful for you? Is that a weight to bear?
Not at all. In fact, it's guided my philosophy as I'm not really a leader, but as someone who has a position of leadership within the Jewish community. I've insisted that this is something we address, namely intermarriage. It's an issue which concerns me intensely, and it's something that really does matter. As I'm sure we'll get to soon, on the issue of antisemitism, though that for me is a huge concern for reasons I shall discuss soon. What's more of a concern to me, though, is Jews marrying out. That's killing more Jews than anti-Semites are currently doing. So we shall be getting onto that, I'm sure, very soon.
I had an incredible quote yesterday.
Yeah.
That I'm gonna butcher this quote. It's we're gonna pretend like I'm not quoting anything. I'm saying a complete new thing, because it was basically you can either kill Jews off by actually doing what Hitler did, wipe them off the planet, just slaughter them, treat them like vermin, and that'll do a good job. That gets rid of 6 million of them. It's done well. Or you can embrace them into your culture. You can show them the beauty of everything that isn't Judaism, and allow them to do it to themselves. And slowly but surely, you intermarry, you leave Yiddishkeit.
Yeah. Anyway, so I was I was raised very identitarian. I became involved in activism, Jewish Israeli or Zionist activism, when I was 13. One day, I went with my best friend at the time and my mother to Hyde Park, Speaker's Corner, and I was, to put it bluntly, utterly flabbergasted. I approached this area and I just saw lots of different speakers, all chanting the same, balderdash the same nonsense about Jews, about Israel, and I was utterly shocked. And of course, over the years, the situation has gone from, you know, heated conversations about Israel to actual violence, acts of violence against, be it a pro-Israel speaker or someone campaigning for Islamic reform. But I went there when I was 13, and my mum went to a shop, I don't know, as Jewish mothers do. She's near Oxford Street, Bond Street, whatever, and she went to a shop and left my friend and I there, expecting us just to sort of play football. Rather, I decided to, instead of you know, going along and doing something useful, I decided to stand up and speak. I'm not sure what I said. I think I spoke about how Oxfam at the time was indirectly funding various Palestinian terror groups. I can't remember, or other charities. I can't remember exactly. Don't quote me. I've no recollection as such. But I spoke.
This was a moment in history. You've got to quote it well.
Indeed. And this, I think, sparked off something within me. And that was the political side. I was always very politically engaged. And after I was 13, I began campaigning for the Conservative Party. I'm no longer a Tory, but I was campaigning in the Conservative Party. And I'm going to fast forward to when I was 16 and I went to Israel with JLGB, Jewish Lesbian, Gays and Bisexuals. No, Jewish Lads and Girls Brigade. And I went on their tour, and something within me was just woke up. There was some form of inner experience that really, I think, transcends language. And I knew from that moment that I really had to get involved in full-time activism. I'll tell you what it was. When I was 14, at the height of the 2014 Gaza conflict, I was at home playing FIFA. Believe it or not, I am a bit cool, or I was at least I was a bit cool back in the day. And I was at home playing FIFA, and there was a demonstration in London for Israel, and my parents were going. I did not want to go. Why should I go? I was playing FIFA. I was having fun. I was eating, Bisley and Bamba. I wanted to stay at home, not go out to some wretched demonstration and sing Hava Nagila and stand by Israel. And I remember my father saying to me these words, and they've never left me. And I think that in 2016, I really understood what those words meant. He said to me, Harry, because he forced me to go with him to the demonstration. Really, he didn't force me, but he made me go. He said to me, Harry, it's your duty to go. And when I was in Israel in 2016, the concept of duty was, once I left, stuck with me. I thought to myself, I have a duty to this state. Because I remember what was being said about Israel at Speaker's Corner in 2013. I didn't really do activism, Israel-related activism, after 2013 when I was 13. But I remember what people thought about Israel, and I felt, I have an obligation to go and stand up for Israel. But I was quite a leftist at the time. I was very much pro-two-state. I was ideologically on the same wing as Yachad today. And I was really convinced that that by going onto the streets and promoting two states and love and stuff, it would be great. And, we could all live in kumbaya, peace and love and harmony and so on. And I decided, therefore, to set up two organisations. Excuse me. One of them was Essex Friends of Israel, which was a local campaigning
You
group.
set that up?
Yes.
Wow.
And thank you. And we would campaign on the streets, and we would go out and we would hand out leaflets, and we would... Oh, it was great. It was really great. I mean, we would have people from all over the county come up to us and ask us questions, and we'd get the occasional mashuganas, but actually most people were really interested because actually we were offering an alternative perspective to what is being offered, or to what was being offered on the mainstream media and still is. We were really trying to disrupt the orthodoxies of our age, or the age then, the orthodoxies of the age back in 2016. And I'm afraid those orthodoxies haven't changed much. The hostility towards Israel is still pretty rife. And so I we went onto the streets and we were doing this, and it was great, and done a range of different events. We hosted Colonel Richard Kemp. It was marvellous. And I also set up another organisation committed to helping young Zionists. I used to, when I was 16, go to different campuses. Not often, but when there were events on, and I wasn't at the Chemazig event in 2016 at UCL, but I saw it, and I thought to myself, well, there's got to be something for sixth formers, because I was a sixth former at the time.
Do you want to explain, by the way, I'm going to give context for our American listeners, sixth form and UCL. We're just going to give...
So between university and... before you go to university, there are two years. That's right, I'm gone completely mad. And you do your final exam. So I think in America you have IBs.
It's like SATs and...
whatever you have in America, yeah. We call them A-levels. That's basically exams to get into university, and the exams you take after you're 16, you do these when you're 18, and so on. Anyway.
And UCL is a university college.
Yes, it's where I'm at now. But I was...
I saw you set up another university, UCL friends of...
Well, we'll get there.
I'm giving spoilers already.
No, I didn't set it out by... Yeah, but anyway, so I saw what was going on at these university campuses, and I thought, well, we have an obligation to educate young Jews about Israel so they know what to say on campuses. And look, the sessions I ran, they were a disaster. They weren't very good. They weren't. I didn't know much, but I thought we had to do something. And, I thought it was the right thing to do, because the Jewish leadership has never been interested in proactively engaging young Jews in Zionism. I think there is a real embarrassment complex which exists among Ashkenazi Jews in the UK. It's why I love Sephardi Jews, and why I'm really pro-Sephardi Jews, because I think Sephardi Jews, yes, in parts in certain corners of the Sephardic community, I'm sure that complex exists, but there is something about Ashkenazi Jews which really frustrates me, and it's a historic thing. It's not just a thing which has emerged in recent years. And so we would do this, and we ran different sessions. We had events like Zionism and Chill. Who needs Netflix and Chill when you've got Zionism and Chill? And we had...
But was it not hard being a 16-year-old on a university campus? Did people take you seriously?
I never ran them on university campus. I ran them for sixth formers.
Okay, fine.
But I used to run them in different community centres.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe just... And even at my house... Mm. People would come to my house, and I would just give them pizza and stuff, and then we would just talk. I didn't run many of these sessions, but we did something. I mentioned that I was very much involved in left-wing, I was quite a left-wing Zionist. I was in Israel in 2017 on a Jewish leadership course. I won't give the name, but it was pretty rubbish. It was pretty much about how we can change the world and make it all a better place. And those are noble values, don't get me wrong. I think it's great that we have a social justice. I think it's great that Jews have a social justice dimension and a real belief in social justice. But social justice has its time and place, I think. And when I went to this leadership course, it was just nonsense. I think I got kicked out of a session once because I mentioned the fact that they were raising money for some a developing country, which is a noble thing to do. But I mentioned the fact, I just came back from a Hezbollah march in London. I just came to Israel from a Hezbollah march in London. I thought, why on earth is no one talking about this? This has got to be the priority. How can we ensure that young Jews are able to confront the issues that face during the diaspora? And I therefore sort of fell out of... I sort of abandoned the left-wing path. And I thought, no, we needed a much more assertive, proactive Zionist Jewish approach. And so I discovered an organisation by the name of World Gerut, or Gerut Olami, and we were in discussions about reopening a branch in the UK, and we did. And at first, this was when I was 17, I became youth director of this organisation, and it was really good. We were planning events on how to do proper unapologetic Zionism with young people. We used the term unapologetic Zionism, I remember. And anyway, I was just in the last year of my A-level, so I was very busy with that. I was working. We were still doing the stalls on the streets, by the way. We had a stall, like every Sunday we were doing a stall in different parts of Essex, or in Redbridge rather. But we went to North London a couple of times. We did protests every week. I mean, it was, I'm not being funny. Like, young people today, they think they had a really exciting youth by just sort of taking drugs and drinking and so on. Honestly, the thrill of standing up for your people and the thrill of going out and the butterflies in your tummy before going out to an event.
You've got everyone.
Yeah, and it was great. I loved it. It was, I felt like I was really, you felt like you were doing something great. And I had other young people who really felt that too. And it actually, bizarrely, though we were confronting anti-Semitism, actually, I have to thank the anti-Semites for bringing such wonderful friends and people into my life, and it's to the Palestinian activists' credit that happened. Anyway, I finished A-levels, I went to Israel to do an internship. Very good. I was there for a month. I was writing lectures to give to university campuses and various other things. I had no idea at the time, though, how I was going to do it, because I was going to be at Durham University full-time. I came back from Israel, had a great summer, again doing the stalls, doing protests, whatever. And then I went to Durham. Was there for 8 weeks. I hated it. It was just terrible. I didn't like the degree. I didn't like the place. It was just, it was rubbish. Sorry if any of you are at Durham, by the way. I'm sure you'll have a splendid time, or you're having a splendid time. And I left Durham, and I thought, well, what the hell am I going to do? So I spent some time working in retail. I think I got sacked from that job. I was working in Stratford Westfield, and I was working in some bizarre toy shop selling weird toys to people and pretending I had any idea what I was doing. I didn't. I just spoke to clients, and being the schmoozer I am, probably was flirting with some of the only Yiddish women that would go in, of course. I'm joking. And I then decided, I can't do this anymore. It's just not me. And a very good friend of mine to this day, my boss, who became my boss, Karma, who is the head of World Gerudo, offered me a job as national director, and wow. I loved it. I was acting national director to start off with, but then I became full-time national director, and I was doing that until 2020 or something, and I loved it. So 2018 to 2020, I was doing this, and it was brilliant. We travelled the length and breadth of the country, speaking at different campuses, running stalls, engaging with different students, trying to promote unapologetic Zionism, and it was really interesting, and yeah, it was really good. And I had the opportunity to go to different countries to speak and do events. Went to Ireland, Germany, and Israel, and it was really good. And I met some really interesting students. There were times that I ran events and they were calamitous. I really messed up at times, but it was all great. It was all part of the learning experience. And we were saying before that people need a year out before they go to university or commit to something, career-wise. And I think you're absolutely right. And I needed that. And it was great because I was able to do a range of different things. I was able to make mistakes. I was able to learn. And I was also making money at the same time. So it was pretty good.
It's helpful.
It is helpful. But then because of my work, I fell in love with Jewish history. And so I'm here now at UCL doing my degree in full-time in history and Jewish studies, which I love. It's a great degree. And because of my work, because of lockdowns, actually, thanks to lockdown. Lockdown was
terrible for some.
It was
great for others.
Yeah, my lockdown was utterly terrible. I can't use another word here, but it was utterly terrible, and I really was miserable. I was really depressed, but I found salvation in writing, and my partner too, and it was really good. And I was able to write on a range of different subjects, and I got really into free speech and critical thinking, and it really mattered to me, particularly after the whole BLM thing erupted. I really became passionate about writing about, defending free speech. And so once I began at UCL, I was very much involved in standing up to trying to refute the myth or debunk the myth that UCL is an institution of disruptive thinking, and I wrote a piece for the Jewish News on that subject. And so I'm now a critical thinking fellow at the Ayan Hirsi Ali Foundation. Ayan Hirsi Ali is an ex-Muslim, and she amplifies the voices, at least her foundation does, amplifies the voices of reformers within Islam, but also to address issues pertaining to FGM, female genital mutilation, the persecution of gay people, the persecution of Christians, and basically trying to give a voice to those who have been harmed, not necessarily by white heterosexual men. And that's the sort of narrative I now debunk, and I'm working on a project at the moment in which I'm exploring how Jews in Europe really are paying the price for that idea, namely the idea that all bad things are the fault of white heterosexual men, because a lot of my work is writing about anti-Semitism, contemporary anti-Semitism, and this is an unpalatable reality for many Jewish leaders. They don't want to talk about it. That is that the bulk of hostile anti-Jewish attitudes today is coming from parts of the Muslim community. There are disproportionate negative attitudes towards Jews within the Muslim communities in Europe, and a disproportionate number involved in acts of violence against Jews and their property. And for the people on the traditional anti-racist side, this can't be so, because only white men can do bad things, right? Well,
is it more than just anti-Semitism? Is there other things that they're doing that isn't, like I'm saying, like you're saying, against LGBT?
Oh, completely, women, yes, and absolutely right. This is part of a much wider social issue, and I was writing about FGM. There are, I think, what was the statistic? 200 million women today who are living as victims of FGM, right? Well, where do you ever hear...
200 million, did you
200 million, yes. Where do you ever hear the free the nipple feminists talking about victims of FGM? You don't hear it. Because again, they're going to have to talk about where most FGM is happening, and unfortunately... it doesn't fit in with their narrative. It's inconvenient for them to talk about this issue. I do, because there are genuine people in this world who are suffering. But the human rights narrative, and human rights is a noble, just cause, and I believe it's the obligation of every Jew to stand by it. After all, we mustn't forget René Cassin and Jews who are involved in actually writing human rights laws that have thankfully, paved the way for such for the free society that we all can benefit from. But human rights activists, they aren't particularly interested in talking about it. I do, and when it comes to it, I'm just going to take it back to anti-Semitism now. The traditional anti-racists don't want to talk about what's happening with Europe's Jews. And I believe that Europe's Jews are in grave danger. Now, I'm no one to exaggerate anti-Semitism. In fact, I've been very vocal when it comes to, for example, last week, I'm not sure if any of you know this, but there is the Anthony Mosley, I think his name, his foundation. He was the grandson of Oswald Mosley, who was a prominent fascist in the 1930s and 40s and beyond. And basically, a university, I think, want to dedicate a wing, or I can't remember what exactly, and name the wing after Mosley. And for many, this is wrong, because they're using the name Mosley and like, oh my God, this is anti-Semitism. Frankly, no, it's not. I'm not convinced that this is anti-Semitism. I think that actually the foundation, does work which has benefited many people, and if a university want to do that, I have no problem with it. And actually, the same people were protesting about the university receiving money from this foundation, from universities rather, receiving money from this foundation, never talk about the fact that there are universities, not just in Europe, but around the world, who receive inordinate sums of money from Arab Muslim states, or from individuals within those states, who, in those states, gay men are thrown off buildings. Those states, persecute Christians, those states are racist. They don't want to talk about that, but they do want to talk about, or even China. They don't want to talk about China funding education systems in this country, and yet there's over 1 million Uyghur Muslims in concentration camps in China. Why don't people want to talk about that? Because it doesn't fit in with this narrative. And what I'm writing about is how Jews are paying the price for that. Because, firstly, it doesn't address the issue of Islamist anti-Semitism. It also doesn't address, because it's part of a much wider social issue. That is to say, because of this narrative that only white men can do bad things, it means that white working class people in this country, in France, in Germany, other parts of Western Europe, haven't been permitted to have a conversation about multiculturalism or immigration, or national identity, or this sense of, well, actually, we feel our nation state is being eroded by the various things we associate with multiculturalism. And I think that's extraordinarily dangerous, because you pave the way for the far right, or the populist right. And I, as a social democrat, I'm left of centre, or centrist. I'm quite politically centrist. I want to see my fellow social democrats talk about, confront the very real issues, the legitimate issues that working class people in our country are facing when it comes to issues about immigration and multiculturalism. Because the only people who seem to be giving those individuals a voice are those on the right. What has happened to the left that they have abandoned the working class for the woking class? And the left's abandonment of the working classes is very dangerous for us Jews, because it's going to pave a way for far-right resurgence, which is never a good thing, because the far right is still out there. It still exists. We should be very alarmed by it. So it's important to understand what's happening to the whole multiculturalism debate and what's happening to Jews as a result of what I consider to be failed multiculturalism is part of a much broader social issue that hasn't been addressed by social democrats, but rather the only people who seem to be addressing the question of immigration and multiculturalism are those on the right. Just see what's happening with Zemmour, Le Pen in France, or the AfD in Germany, Geert Wilders in Holland, and other places too. So yeah, I think I've exhausted that particular point. Sorry, go on.
No, that was fascinating, because obviously we really delved into the heart of like where this all come from, because I can see it's not just like a little thing that you know, I like Israel, I want to go down this route of supporting Israel. This is a deep-rooted love for it. This is deep-rooted in finding the truth, actually showing people the truth. My question is, do you feel that people are listening?
I think that there are people listening, and in fact I think the majority of people oppose this wholeheartedly. And they proved that to me in 2019 when they rejected Corbyn and Corbynism. But the fact is, and this is an issue I have with commentators who just call Corbyn anti-Semitic. I think that there is a degree of anti-Semitism to this guy.
But it's more nuanced than that.
But yeah, Corbyn, I think, was clever. And I think left-wing parties are clever. Why should they be opposed to Israel? Why should they be in support of Israel or speak positively about Zionism when actually a much larger constituency, namely the Muslim constituency, would abandon them if they were to speak approvingly of Israel? I think actually one of the great issues we face as Jews in Western Europe is the demographics issue. Now, of course, the majority of Muslims in Europe are law-abiding, good, decent people who have made a profound contribution to Western civilization. I believe it was 5.5 million Muslims involved in the Allied war effort, and if it weren't for them, I would not be here today. And there are many Muslims who speak out against anti-Semitism. I want to make that incontrovertibly clear. There are many that do. Nevertheless, there are hostile elements within the Muslim community. Mehdi Hassan, a practicing Muslim, called it our dirty little secret. And he was right. There is a problem. But the left are politically expedient in that, well, actually, they're just responding to the demands of their constituents. And so, whilst I think actually people are listening, the majority do reject it, the left, so long as these elements grow, well, I'm not sure how long that will last for, especially with what's going on in our academic system, especially with so many young people going through our academic system exposed to hard left, anti-Western sentiments. They will go out into this world, many of them with confused gender identities and thinking, well, actually, it's sexy to be pro-Palestinian. If you identify as they, them in Gaza, God knows what would happen to you. Nevertheless, they go out there waving their Palestinian flags, thinking what they're doing is woke and sexy. But it's alarming to me because it's clear that the left have found an alliance with Islamists. That is, Islamism has been made woke by these activists. The Palestinian flag, let's be clear, there is an element to it that is about national liberation, but it's fundamentally driven by, in my view, a contempt for Jews being sovereign on their own land. And more profoundly, Jews or Israelis ruling over Muslims on territory that was once Islamic. I think this flag is so driven by dimitude, and yet the flag which is about Islamism, which is about, in my view, extremism, well, has also been embraced by the LGBT rainbow flag waving left, because it's become also the flag of anti-colonialism, anti-imperialism. So we're seeing a very interesting fusion, I believe.
Which is so contradictory as well.
Indeed, of extremist Muslim. I don't like the term Islam extremist Muslim. I think that actually this is an interpretation of Islam that is, of course, extreme, but actually it is an interpretation of Islam. And I think one of the mistakes we make is when we try to say, well, the extremists have nothing to do with Islam. Well, look, there's no discussing Islamism without discussing the first 5 letters of that word. There is no solution to this problem unless we're prepared to have that conversation. But the alliance between that element, that is the Muslim anti-Semitic element, with the hard leftist element, is dangerous. And because both are growing in number, I think Jews in Europe are in grave danger. And because of people the working classes feeling so disenfranchised, we're seeing a rise of the populist right and traditional white and white anti-Semitism. Well, that kills. Okay, you just see what happened in Halle in Germany, and also, so we're almost being attacked by both sides. And by the way, the people on the far right also adopt the Palestinian flag, again for their own Nazi ends. So things are going to get worse, but this is why I believe it's up to us to stand up for the values of Western civilization. That is tolerance, but not tolerance of the intolerant. I'm gonna guide you on this next point a little bit, just to go further in to one of the questions that we were discussing before of where do you see the UK Jewry actually being with all of this that's going on? I don't think it's going to happen soon. But look, when we had in May people driving down the streets of London saying F their Jews, rape their daughters. I'm not going to say the full term, but anyway, when they use those, when they use that horrific language, chas v'shalom, there's another war in Israel, but these things happen. Well, what's going to happen next? If they can do that on a megaphone, what's to say they can't smash up Jewish property in Golders Green? They drove down our streets with flags. These were, do you think there's a they were similar. These are the beginnings of what I don't like. I don't like historical parallels. I don't think they're useful, but I do consider these. This is the beginning, I believe, of various groups within Europe's Muslim communities, potentially doing similar things, similar kind of violence that we saw with pogroms. I think Jewish property is going to be attacked. I think that we are going to see things that are going to go wrong because actually, well, if this happened, in 2020, when the next conflict comes along, what's going to happen then?
And this is scary, because I saw a video of Poland in the 1930s, the Jewish community in the 1930s, thriving. Everyone, they were loving. They were so, I saw happiness in that. To parallel that with Poland 1940s, Poland 1943. I'm saying 10 years doesn't seem like a big deal. Like 10 years time is 2030.
Indeed. It doesn't, and things can change very quickly, and and that's the point I come in. I mean, if you were to say if you put it like this, I don't like this, but if you were to say to someone in Germany in the 1920s that in 20 years' time this country will be sending Jews from this country and beyond to the gas chambers, who would have believed you? And I'm not saying we're going there now. I definitely am not saying that, but I'm saying that things are getting worse. But we have to talk about, our leaders must talk about the issues, the reason why things are getting worse. Let's give it a name. Let's say it's Muslim anti-Semitism. It's not a palatable thing to say because of the idea that Muslims in Europe, there's been a Judification of the immigrant. That is to say that immigrants today, because of Europe's memory and this idea of never againism, the idea that, we must never repeat the crimes of the Third Reich in the 1930s and 40s. We can never do that again, and we can only do that by embracing tolerance and love and remembering the past and what Martin Luther referred to as perpetual penitence, the idea that we always have to feel guilty for our past and stuff, and that we only through feeling guilty can we ensure that we never commit these crimes. Well, that's endangered Europe's Jews, because it means that our leaders and secular and non-Jewish leaders are not talking about anti-Semitism honestly. They want to talk about what's going on with the far right. I remember when I went to Essex University for a talk, and a representative from UJS was there. Not once did they mention Palestinian anti-Semitism on campus. They never mentioned Palestinianism, ever. The only thing they spoke about was the marginal, the insignificant, far-right anti-Semitism on campus, which, if I'm being honest, I've never really heard of. I'm not sure if anyone has. It doesn't really exist. Okay, it exists in parts, but it's not really there. It's because Jews in Europe feel that to speak honestly about issues, to speak assertively, to challenge multiculturalism, will in some way be perceived to be racist, or even more absurdly, and this is the term which is totally ridiculous, Islamophobia. They'll be perceived to be Islamophobic. No. I would much rather we be accused of all sorts of things than us not speaking honestly about our problems. And part of the issue I have with cancel culture, by the way, and suspending free speech, is that actually, we want to talk about silencing professors who say anti-Semitic things and stuff. I disagree. I think actually, David Miller in Bristol, I think it was wrong for the community to have put as much pressure on the university to have got rid of him. I thought that was wrong, and I actually vocally declared my opposition to that. Nevertheless, the reason I did oppose it was because I think that actually the very thing which keeps us Jews safe is free speech. And particularly now when it comes to Muslim anti-Semitism, the very thing that's going to keep us Jews safe is us being able to speak honestly about the issue we are facing. And actually, not just us Jews, but the defence of tolerance and multiculturalism itself. I don't want to see people address these hostile elements within Europe's Muslim communities. I don't want to see the far right do it. I want to see people who are committed to tolerance, people who are committed to liberal democratic ideas, lead this debate. Let's reclaim this debate from the far right. Let's reclaim this debate from louts, frankly, and let's have an honest, reasoned conversation about what we Jews are facing in Europe, but not just us Jews, because actually the intolerance against us Jews also is an intolerance towards women, particularly white working class women, as we saw in places like Rotherham, to gay people. God knows why. People go to rainbow, events, and I'm a big fan of the LGBT cause. I'm right behind it. But actually, you never hear on these marches rainbow activists talking about gay men in Iran. Why should they? It's only white men who hurt gay people, isn't it? And yet, they're so oppressed here in Europe and so tortured here in Europe. They need to say how bad Europe is. But I mean, if they were to have that parade in Tehran, let's see what would happen to them anyway. But they don't talk about these issues, and for me, that's a major problem. I can't really remember where I was going with this, but yeah.
Either way,
a major problem.
we're I'm loving these.
Sorry.
No, I'm loving the. Lost my words now. You got not on a tangent.
Yeah, sorry.
This is why we have an articulate person on the room. This is why should be schmoozing with Harry.
No, thank you.
He's got it all covered.
He's a schmoozer. Schmoozing with Abby is a schmoozer.
I want to move on to the next topic before we have to finish up. I want to know who you're passionate for Israel. I feel it's in you.
Thank you.
So why not the army? Why are you not living in Israel?
Well, there's a short answer and there's a long answer. Short answer, there's a few answers actually. I'll give you a short answer. One, the army, probably because I'm a coward. Mm-hmm. I have no issue saying that. Probably because I'm a coward.
I agree. I'm saying that I agree. I would love to do it. I'm terrified.
Sure. No. I just, it's not my shtick.
Yeah.
I'm not a soldier. I like to write. I like to speak. I can't pick up a gun. My mum would. Well, you're right. I don't know if I tried, but I mean that's not. But again, that's not. I suppose that's me being a bit facetious. Also, why not live in Israel? Because, people are going to dislike me for saying this. I feel very European. I'm a proud European Jew. Mm-hmm. I love European civilization, or at least what it is now. And I think my place is here. But I do think that things are getting worse. And I am really considering the possibility of leaving, because there are times, when we were almost lynched in a mob back in May by a really terrifying coalition of hard leftists and Islamists, but they were predominantly Islamic extremists there, and they at one point threw a large rock. I thought to myself, well, there are 3,000 in this crowd. It takes one to kill one Jew. If there's 3,000, God knows what that means. What does that mean for the future of Jewry? There were thousands at the height of the last conflict on our streets with Palestinian flags. What is the future for Jews in Europe? And so I am of the view that Israel must be a very real possibility. For now, it isn't. Because
Do you want it to be that the only reason you move there is because you have to, rather because you want to?
Do you know what? It's unfortunate, but I think for me, yes. I don't like. I don't like saying that, and it's not a very Zionist thing to say. I do have a rather complicated relationship with Zionism. That is, I'm not very I don't really have that Ahavas Haaretz. I don't really have that love of the land. I mean, I love Israel to bits, but I'm very much a Tel Avivian Jew. Yeah. I love Jerusalem, and I love
the westernized.
Yeah,
I'm surprised, because someone who's into the history of it, I thought you would love feeling the Jerusalem rock and just.
No, I do love it, and I do feel. I'll be honest. The reason I got involved in 2016, I'll go back to how I got really involved in Zionist activism.
We're just warning, we're going to have to...
Oh, sorry.
No.
But when I did Zionist activism, when I was... the reason I got into Zionist activism was because I had a revelation in Jerusalem, and I got very spiritual in Jerusalem. But, I don't really want that sort of life. I don't really feel it.
It's very fair. I think people are terrified to say that as well. Because everyone wants to say, I love Israel, I'm a Zionist, I'm proud to be a Jew. But at the same time, it's very fair. We're living comfortably. But I say, why should we be forced out of living comfortably? If you want to live in Israel, live in Israel, and I think it's very important. For those who don't want to live in Israel, I think we should have a right to live in. We shouldn't have to be forced to live in Israel. We should be going there because we want to.
I can listen, and I think that's perfectly legitimate. And you're right. My view is that Israel for me is, and I suppose again this goes back to how I was raised, very much on an identitarian survivalist mentality. It's the reason why my family was so emphatic about marrying in, and still are. And I'm therefore a survivalist, a Jewish survivalist, and Israel for me is the only way to ensure Jewish survival. Take the survival element away, would I be a Zionist? I don't think so. Because I'm I just don't have that, and I'm envious of people that do, because I guess I'm very sort of practical, and I probably have my spiritual side has been malnourished, and I ought to do more to explore the spiritual side within me, because I do believe it's strong, but I suppose there's a bit of a disconnect. But anyway, yeah.
Either way, Harry, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much. I really did enjoy it.
Incredible. I think my audience is predominantly American currently.
Sure.
I think they're gonna love you.
Thank you.
You're gonna hopefully reach.
Well, they're only human. How can they not?
The very dapper Harry Saul Markham.
Yeah, thank you.
Honestly, it was very kind of you to come on here.
Thank you very much.
I hope everyone else enjoyed it as much as I did, and yeah, we're gonna end off here.
Thank you so much.
Cool.
Thank you.